There's been a lot of videos about the intro to the song Drive My Car by the Beatles, how it starts on the and of 4, and then when the drums come in on 1, it's an odd spacing, and the feel of everything just feels kind of off balance. And boy, they sure were clever when they came up with that, and how did they figure that out? Well, I don't think that they were trying to be that clever. I think the reason the song intro is the way it is because of the way it was recorded and the procedures that were involved. That's what this video is about. All right, a little disclaimer here. This is all my opinion. This is me doing speculation. If I say something along the lines of Paul did this and then George did that, it's me merely speculating, so take it with a grain of salt, please. So this all came about because a friend of mine and I were going to cover the tune just for fun and make a little video of it to put on my channel. So I thought, oh, okay, great, I'll get the drums program. So I started working on the song, and what I usually do is I'll get a copy of the Beatles recording and I'll put it down on a couple of tracks, and then I will tempo map the session to the tempo changes that the Beatles did when they recorded the song. And of course, they're not major, but there's a couple of slight tempo variations just because that's what happens when people play. But the one thing I did notice was in the intro, for the click to follow the arc of the tempo change, getting from the intro riff into the downbeat of the first verse, I had to do some pretty drastic stuff here with the changes of the tempo so it all kind of lined up. And I thought, well, that's really weird. Why would that be the case, right? And so I got curious, and so I looked on the internet to try to find out what that recording date was like and what the procedures were. So it turns out on the day of the recording, they're going to start with doing a rhythm track. It's George on guitar, Paul on bass, and Ringo on drums. So Paul, from what I read, is showing George the tune, and George, after he sees what Paul shows him, he suggests that they incorporate a riff from an Otis Redding tune called Respect. And the riff is... And apparently, Paul liked the idea, and so they did incorporate it. Okay, so imagine they're going to lay down this rhythm track, guitar, bass, and drums. So how do they start it? Well, Paul has shown the tune to George and Ringo, and every time I've ever seen anything in the studio, Paul counts the tunes off, especially if they're his tunes. So I am thinking Ringo did a pickup on 2 beats, on 3 and 4, going into the downbeat of the first verse, which is how they started it. So imagine Paul's like 1, 2, 1, 2, dum ba da da dum. Right? So Paul counts it off, Ringo does a little drum fill, and they go right into the tune. So one can imagine the rhythm track starting something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's what they had as an intro. They do all their overdubs. They do their percussion overdubs, they do their vocal overdubs, and they do the piano overdubs. They do some harmony overdubs. They're working on 4 tracks, so they have to be very careful about what they record, when they record it, what they marry together. They have to make commitments. So from what I read on the internet, the last thing that got done on the day they recorded Drive My Car was Paul doing the lead guitar part. He did the lead guitar part, he did the in slide guitar part, and that was the last thing that was done that day. Here's what I think happened. They go inside, they do a playback. Paul goes, oh, we need an intro. I want to do a guitar riff intro. So they have to figure out how to put this intro on the front of the track, because the way it starts out, I think, is just with them counting it off and boom, going into the song. So how are you going to put something on the front of that 4-track master? Well, Paul shows the engineer his riff that he wants to do, and the engineer has 2 options. He can either record that riff to another machine and then fly it into that 4-track, or he can live dangerously and have Paul play on a track that has nothing on it for a little while, but he has to get out of record before that first thing on that track that Paul's doing that intro riff on starts, or otherwise he'll erase it. So I'm of the opinion that they recorded that electric guitar intro on another machine, and then they flew that into that 4-track master. I say this because when I was in my 20s, I worked in recording studios that had nothing but reel-to-reel tape recorders. Here I am with Leon Russell doing a little 2-inch tape editing for the guy. This is me with Phil Collins doing some mixing with him. Look how pretty I am right there. Back then, when a client wanted you to do something out of the ordinary, you had to become inventive and figure out a way to get things done because the tools were pretty primitive. So I'll show you how they might have gotten this done. Ah, the airplane's flying over. That's nice. Okay, so here we have an actual reel-to-reel tape recorder here. I transferred the intro guitar part that I'd already recorded to this tape recorder. So let's just pretend I recorded the guitar part on this tape recorder. So if we hit play, well, what we want to do is cue it up. So I used to give it like a quarter of a turn. Let's see if this is a good amount to get it up to speed. Okay, let's think about this. So, tape machine has to get up to speed. So, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, that's a little late. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. That's what we want. So I want it right about there. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's about right. Okay, so this is what they were doing if they were flying it in from a different machine. Because I used to do this all the time when I was a young lad. All right, recording on purple. Gonna get our cue from here. When I hear the count on 3, I'm gonna hit play on that tape recorder. And hopefully that's gonna be what we want. Okay, so here we go. When I hear 3, I hit play. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so here it is. This is our fly-in track. Let's take a look how close we were. Well, actually very close. The purple track is the fly-in track I just did, and the blue bottom track is Paul's intro. So what happened is, more than likely, they flew this thing in from a different machine. When they flew it in, it wasn't dead on. More than likely, he wanted it to go da 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 da. Ask the girl, right? That's more than likely what they were looking for. But flying it in, it wasn't dead on, and they realized it was kind of closer to the and of the beat instead of the down beat because they had flown it in. And they listened back and they decided to keep it because it was clever, and they knew it was different. And they said, well, heck, let's keep that. That's just the way it should be because we flew it in and it's a little not where we thought it would be, but it's in a great place, so let's just leave it and people will try and figure it out. Now, the amazing thing is McCartney, his band, when they play live, they do start on the end of 4. They go 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. Oh gosh, I can't even do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, da 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 da. As the girl, what? They do that. They know they are replicating what's on the record, and it is clever. So it is kind of cool. But I do think it came as just the way they were putting stuff together. It was late at night. It was the last thing they did, and they went, screw it, let's keep it. At least that's what I think. Well, whether you agree with me or not, it is at least an interesting concept of how this thing came to be, and it comes from me being a recording engineer way back when, way before digital, and working with tape machines and flying stuff in. So it's a possibility. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe and share with your friends. I'm Rusty Smith for Record, Mix, Repeat.